Hello and welcome to the program. I am Suren. Somebody, after hearing all what we have spoken before in regard to the fourth plane, which is the plane of color, asked me a variety of questions, and I intend to talk about this intriguing subject a little further during this episode. Let us consider the breaking of the image, or the subject of the soul man. Now, in illusion land, you wear an etheric body, as we all do. It is of finer and more tenuous nature than the physical form that you are familiar with. If you belong to the second classification and are a soul man, in other words, an intelligent, ethically developed soul, you will desire to go up the ladder of consciousness. The longing for an earthly existence then will be gone. However, there are a few exceptions. Some of the soul men desire to return to earth, or wish, at any rate, for some interplanetary existence, where they may achieve levels of intellectual triumph, or they may play a notable part in this strife of earthly or other planetary life. These then become incarnate once again. But the majority of the soul man, although having their etheric bodies put on a shape which is a degree finer, then released from illusion land, from that nursery in which they merely lived in the old fantasy of earth. Now, all these beings are wearing subtle bodies, and they enter a world we can call as superterrestrial, for they still abide within the ether. Ether is actually a bad term, but at the moment we cannot find, or one does not seem to be able to find, another word to define that air, or shall we say fluid, or emanation, which is also of the material universe that we are aware of. Remember that ether is the ancestor or beginning of matter, as we all know. Now, as long as soul man would live mainly in the form, he must be content to be a super-terrestrial being. That state contains many degrees, in fact, many vehicles of expression. They differ in the higher frequency or rates of vibration. The finer they are, the greater their spiritual and intellectual perceptions. And the wider their grasp, the loftier their experience of that mystery we call, or many call, God. The goal of all spiritual attainment. Now, in that state, beyond illusion, when you are living consciously and are fully aware of your subtle body, you dwell in a world which is the original of the earth. Briefly, earth, feels like an ugly, smudged copy of the world, the real world, wherein dwells the subtle soul in its subtle body. You are doubtlessly aware that the copyist, when he produces his painting of a masterpiece, usually fails through being unable to convey the essence or the soul of the work in question. You find many such copyists in places like Philippines, Taiwan, and other places around your country. The measurements may be correct, coloring and line excellent, but it has no life. It is lifeless. So you are left cold and aloof, and you are merely stirred to a pretty irritation when you get a copy of an old master you loved. The earth, as you know it, seems as well this unreal, a copy of the masterpiece. It looks like a shadow with all the defects of a shadow. It is at times distorted and maybe even grotesque, a mere dim outline. As you observe, the animation is absent. The true life is not expressed in it. Within the subtle world of which we speak, you will perceive a variety of forms which are not normally known on your known world, and therefore may not be expressed in words. Yet there is a certain similarity and correspondence between the appearances of nature and the appearances of this luminiferous plane. Flowers are there, but these are in shapes unknown to you. Exquisite in color, radiant with light, and such colors, such lights are not contained within any earthly octave, but are expressed by those of us on outside, in thoughts, not in words. For as previously remarked, words for us have become obsolete, says our communicator. However, the soul in this plane of consciousness must struggle and labor, know all about sorrow, but not earthian sorrow, know ecstasy, but not earth-based ecstasy. The sorrow can be of a spiritual character. The ecstasy is of a spiritual kind. These two transcend imagination, but they finally lead the soul to the borders of the super-terrestrial region. apotheosis of form. The soul becomes possessed over a new awareness as well as of finer perceptions. When he or she decides to go upwards rather than downwards on the ladder of consciousness, and therefore he or she enters the fourth plane of being. On earth, the average man's normal ego is largely controlled by the body's desires. Though the spirit inspires its life and at times lights up the darkness of the human brain with luminous flashes. Still, the spirit, or what one can call the deeper mind, can only faintly impress itself upon the ego. Now, in the fourth stage, the spirit is able to enter with greater intensity into the time measurement, which can be called the soul or ordinary consciousness. This soul becomes aware of the change through his greatly increased intellectual powers. With that increased awareness, there comes greater concentration. The memory of the earth life and its details is, for the time being, lost, as long as the soul dwells in form. He is subject to the rhythm of the universe and therefore to some form of time, while conceiving time and appearance as one symbol. The soul bears with him, however, the fundamental emotional, or rather retains contact with it in the first stage, on the fourth plane of life. This plane of color might be more aptly termed the breaking of the image. From this level of consciousness, the soul learns how to control form, learns by myriad experiences the ghostliness of all substance. In the anterior period of this evolution, however, he has been controlled largely by substance. Slowly, the graven image is broken. Slowly, the ego learns so to draw from the higher soul, or spirit, that he can, at will, break up his form and break from all forms, all appearances about him or her. Of course, each individual's experiences vary enormously. Considering our channel's example as a sensitive soulman who makes a definite progress upwards and who does not, as do so many, journey with the undulatory cinewave motion of the sea, up and down, though always reaching a little higher than before. Now, this sensitive soul man realizes first of all that he has entered a world of myriad colors, lights and sounds. He is aware of a body entirely dissimilar from the normal human body. As regarding to appearance, it can only be described as being in looks a compound of light and colors, which may be unimaginable on your part. The shape of this form is influenced by all the ego's past acts, so far as they have impressed themselves on his or her deeper consciousness. This colored compound may be, at times, grotesque, ugly, bizarre in form, but may be lovely beyond words, may possess strange absurdities of outline, or may transcend the loftiest dream of earthly beauty. In this many-colored region, the form vibrates with extreme intensity, higher frequencies. For now, the mind expresses itself more directly in form, so that we can hear the thoughts of other souls. At first, only one at a time may break upon that hearing, but after a while, we become accustomed to the fact that we may hear the thoughts of several other souls, each apart and distinct from the other. We dwell in a world of appearances in some respects similar to the earth. Only all this vast region of appearances is gigantic in conception. It can be terrifying, but exquisite, according to the manner in which it presents itself to the soul man. It is far more fluidic, less solid in appearance than earthly surroundings. This many-colored world is nourished by light and life in a greater purity and vibrates at an unimaginable speed. The souls who dwell within the first zone realize that with increased consciousness, they have gained a far greater sensitivity. A hostile soul man's mentality may, with a powerful projection of thought, blast and wither some part of your body of light and color. You have to learn how to send out protective rays. If on earth some man or woman was your enemy, just imagining, and you hated one another bitterly, you may encounter this man or woman on the luminiferous plane. The old emotional memory will awaken when you meet. For love and hate, you inevitably towards those souls who are in the pattern of your particular design, which is ever shaping and reshaping in the tapestry of eternity. You will understand, therefore, that pain and pleasure, joy and despair are once more experienced. Again, however, they differ greatly from the earthly conception of them. They are of a finer quality or an intellectualized character, mightier in their inspiration, more profound the despair they arouse, inconceivable the bliss they stir within the depths of your being. I'm not saying that this will happen, but it may happen. On this luminiferous plane, as I call, this struggle increases in intensity. The efforts expended are beyond the measure of earthly experience. But the results of such labor, of such intellectualized and spiritualized toil and battle, also transcend in the most superb emotion in the life of man. In brief, all experience is refined, heightened, intensified, and the actual zest of living is increased immeasurably. Awareness on the fourth plane. The preceding remarks outlining our more verified existence in this super-terrestrial zone must be regarded as merely a rough tracing of a very varied state of being. For instance, in that more spiritualized state, there are many forms of expression. In it, the soul wears several bodies, passing from one to another as he advances. These become more and more subtle. Indeed, the fineness of their texture cannot be grasped or understood by even as super scientists. One law prevails, however. Your soul is only aware of those beings who possess bodies vibrating with the same intensity. That is, unless he or she puts himself or herself into a state akin to that strange sleep known as hypnosis. When thus conditioned, he or she may go back, temporarily descend a rung of the ladder, and make mental contact with a soul who inhabits a denser shape. He can even descend into the Hades, enter its fog, and come into touch with human beings. He is thereby frequently in the dream of the earth's personality, and it is as if the memory of his experiences on a higher plane were temporarily anesthetized away. So he is incapable of conveying to earth, save with rare exceptions, any interesting or remarkable information. Quote in the cocoon of earth memories which frequently are not his or her own, he or she can merely speak of trivial material affairs. It is as if he or she were a drugged bee in a hive, a bee sated with honey. His awareness on the luminiferous plane has vastly increased, but usually he cannot convey a sense of it to those other individuals. He may endeavor to contact if he chooses once more, like to go down to hell in search of the beloved. These remarks will explain why, so you ever receive any spontaneous impression of the departed. Indeed, men and women are as ghosts to us, and only when they see us with faith and with love do they obtain any convincing suggestion of ourselves, of our earth personality. Such a search is legitimate and will neither hurt nor distress the one who is summoned or sought. Now, a human being cannot imagine a new sound, a new color or feeling. So it is impossible for him or her to conceive the infinite variety of new sounds, new colors, and feelings experienced by those of us on the fourth plane, which had been called the breaking of the image. Nearly half of the earth life is passed in sleep, as you know. That is to say, in a state of unconsciousness. And it is calculated that even when man is awake, his normal healthy self, his consciousness is broken by gaps of unconsciousness, 40 or 50 to a second. In this respect, he resembles a lighthouse that stands upon a rocky coast on a starless night, as it was once channeled and presented. Darkness impenetrable covers the sea. Every now and then it is lit up by a ray of light, which flashes across the waters, illuminating their surface, but feebly and momentarily. Man's consciousness, as appears now, in his journey up the ladder, and he is gradually emerging from that darkness in the sense that the light becomes brighter, more continuous. When he reaches the fourth stage, his awareness is as brilliant as an ordinary man's awareness is feeble. There are far fewer gaps of unconsciousness. For the spirit can make a surer, more definite, and more consistent contact with the soul by reason of the fineness of its body and its greatest subtlety, by reason of increased intellectual activity on his part. Let's say the blind kitten or the puppy is beginning to open his eyes at last. This was said before. Please examine the picture of the night sea again. It is almost continually illuminated by the beacon of the lighthouse. Only at long intervals does darkness descend. Now, how is it possible to convey to human beings by the primitive, rude sounds you call words the implications that arise from this far greater awareness? For instance, the intensity of the thought processes of the emotional life seem limitless when compared with the sluggish movements of the human brain in a physical sense, with the crude passion that is roused in the stirring moments of earth life. Take the intellectual activity of a slug or a snail and compare it with that of a man, and you will understand how different is the mental world of the soul on the fourth plane from that of the human being. Our conception of space differs entirely from yours. I can give you a faint glimpse of it if I use the wireless message, your electronic devices, as an illustration. I have got to concentrate my thought for what you might call a moment, and I can build up a likeness of myself. Send that likeness speeding across our vast world to a friend, to one that is in tune with me. Instantly, I appear before that friend, though I'm remote from him or her, and my likeness holds speech in thought. Remember, not words, with this friend. Yet, all the time, I control it from an enormous distance. And as soon as the interview is concluded, I withdraw the life of my thought from that image of myself, and it vanishes. Of course, I can only make this contact with those on my plane who are familiar with me and therefore are in my rhythm. This trivial illustration of the power of thought to give reality to itself is mentioned here merely in order to show you how much nearer we have come to the creative principle. We are gradually learning how to live within and without form, learning how ghostly is the most tenuous substance. We are becoming aware of the fluid, flowing character of mind. We understand how it can control energy and life force those units which nourish all manifestations and appearances. With that, I shall be meeting you by the next episode. Until then, keep well, be happy, smile often. Thank you.